What is up, everyone? Happy Thursday. Welcome to another edition of my office hours where I sit here and I answer whatever questions you have about startups, from idea all the way to product market fit, focusing on go-to-market, traction, prototyping, and all that good stuff. And we've got some great questions today. We're going to talk about goals, signals, and metrics. We're going to talk about what makes a startup unique. We're going to talk about traction, of course, and a few other miscellaneous things. So super excited to have you guys here today. A couple of things, since I'm here every single Thursday at 10 a.m., as you can see up in the other corner there, you can ask any question you want. So you can submit a question in advance. You can throw it in the chat, of course, but you can go to this link here, which is also in the description. And you can submit a question. You can submit a video question, you can submit an audio question, or you can just type a question in. Either way, I will share it and answer it on the air live. So let's kind of dive in here with our first question. So our first thing is from June from Organic Nearby, and it's about goals and signals and metrics. And this is because of my weekly newsletter that I sent out. I send it out every single Wednesday. It's one tip, trick, or mindset shift to help you go to market faster, to find traction faster, or at a minimum to fail fast trying. And I talked about goals, signals, and metrics yesterday. And so if you want to check that out, I'll put the link down in the description. But this is basically the newsletter here. Talked about why startups have crappy goals. Talked about 3 big steps for identifying what the right thing to measure in your startup is, starting with goals, then moving on to signals for those goals, and then moving finally into metrics and how you actually go measuring that. And so there's a good amount of detail here. So go ahead and check that out, and you can subscribe all the way at the bottom should you so choose, and check that out for yourself. But moving on, let's actually talk about the process of goals, signals, and metrics. So it's a 3-step process here. And the basic idea is that at the big 30,000 foot view, you have to start with identifying what your goal is. What's the big thing that you're trying to achieve? This could be your BHAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal. This could be your the next big thing that you want to achieve, the next big step. If you're having a product launch, it could be something related to that. But it's a big goal that you're trying to achieve. And the problem with a big goal is that you can't just achieve it, right? It's not just a thing that whoop, it's done, right? And so you're essentially kicking the can down the road to find out if you're on the right track or not, because you're not getting any data. It's just this big chasm that's too deep to cross. So in order to figure out how do we assess our performance, but without just that huge goal, is that we look for signals that we're on the right track. And so that's, if we break down that goal, we can say, okay, well, that's right if this other thing is right. And so we look for a signal for that. And in the newsletter, I talk about all kinds of examples for what that looks like. And then once we have this set of signals, which might be a chain of signals, right? We might be 5 signals away from the actual goal. So, A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D, leads to our big goal. And so we can't look at, B, C, D, or the goal. We have to start by looking at A. So we identify the one signal that we can measure right now that shows that we're on the right track. And then we move to the final level of specificity at the bottom there, which is metrics, which is how do we actually measure that signal? What's a way that we can translate that signal into something that's measurable? So just a quick example of what this might look like is if you're a SaaS startup, and you can't really measure revenue as the right target because you're still trying to find your early adopters and get them on board. So instead, you might start with a signal that, well, we need to get people engaging with our value proposition on our landing page or something like that. And so then you can say, okay, that's the signal. The signal is that people are engaging with their value prop on our landing page. And so a metric for that could be the number of people land on the landing page. It could be the amount of time spent on the page. It could be a video watch rate, whatever it is that you can use as that signal. Or that metric for that signal of engagement with your value prop. So you can break things down that way. Now you have a thing you can actually measure today that, if you're right on, will get you closer to that goal without just trying to jump ahead 30,000 steps into the future to identify that, to identify the goal. So that's the goals, signals, metrics thing, 30,000 foot view. And so a couple of hellos. Hey, Mike, nice to see you here. Welcome. June is here as well. June's in the house. Hello. And so back to June's question. Let's actually just pull it up here. She sent it in text. I'm just going to show it. So here's June's question. She says, hi, JDM, copied and pasted and listened to your newsletter's goal, targets, and metrics. And I want to know if this fits. Goal, design attractive, intuitive landing page. Target, headline, call to action, what happens when a customer uses a button. Metric, does it satisfy the goal? Set up analytics to track where the customer clicks. Set criteria for landing page success. PS, your startup information makes me think and stimulates ideas and challenges my continual commitment. You're a great coach and leader. Thank you. Oh, June, you're too kind. I bow humbly in gratitude. And thanks for submitting a question. So yeah, so I'm doing a live teardown. Other than copying and pasting this into here, I haven't really read this in advance. So we're doing this in real time. All right, so 30,000 view goal is like, okay, we want to design an attractive landing page. I would actually say that's not a good goal. And the reason that's not a good goal is that it doesn't get you anything, right? That you're hoping that the landing, or sorry, what I meant to say was that doesn't mean anything. What you're hoping is that goal, that attractive landing page will get you something. And it's that something that's much more interesting. Are you looking for customers? Are you looking for newsletter subscribers? Are you looking for people to actually buy produce through this or attend a local event? Or there's something that you're trying to do, and that's the goal. And you're viewing the landing page as a way of achieving that goal. But let's keep focused on the goal, because if you develop an attractive, intuitive landing page, but it doesn't deliver any results, it didn't really help you out. So whatever that thing is supposed to be pointing to, let's start with that. Okay, so then moving on, you have a headline, a call to action, what happens when a customer uses a button. So the signal so if you really wanted to test, like, is our landing page attractive, then a signal you could look at would be, does somebody take the next appropriate step? And that might be clicking a call to action button. And that would be more on the lines of like user experience research, of trying to like really optimize a landing page or really optimize a page in an app. And then that might be exactly what you do, is how many people actually take this next step. And then you use behavioral analytics, you use a tool like Mixpanel, and you track all the little behaviors that happen, and then you form funnels from those in your analytics, and you see, okay, who's dropping off where, and you can optimize all those parts. But that's again assuming that the goal was to make the landing page more attractive as opposed to achieving a goal. And I'm assuming that there's a goal here, because you say down lower, set criteria for landing page success. And so success is doing a lot of heavy lifting in there. And so I really want to know what that is. But so in this case, like a signal, if your goal is if your goal is, are they taking that next step, doing that call to action, whatever that is, then I would say that then okay, a signal is that they're actually filling out that form, and then you can get into a metric about what that actually translates to. But I would focus on the big goal as opposed to just focusing on the mechanism by which you plan to achieve that. And if you want to come back to that in a couple minutes, because I know you're watching live, go ahead and drop into the chat what you want to achieve with that landing page, and maybe we'll take another little quick round about it after we get to a couple of other questions. But so a quick follow-up is the goal a verb or a noun? Well, it's a noun. It's a thing we're trying to do. We're trying to, there's a goal you're trying to do. But in this case, it's a big picture. It's a thing that you can't get right now that's motivating you. That's why we often, refer to it as like a BHAG, and sometimes. But what you're really looking for is what is the thing that you really want to achieve next? And so for you, that again might be something like a number, like you want to get people buying produce through organic nearby, or it might be that you're trying to get people into your community, however you would translate that, or whatever that looks like at the end of the day. But that's the big goal, and then you can look at signals for, am I working toward that big goal? And then you can find a metric to measure a signal that you can look at today. So yeah, feel free to drop in more detail. Happy to revisit that a little bit later. So moving on. So this is a question. How do you define a startup? So actually, I've been in, 4 conversations coincidentally in the last 10 days that was all around this question of where do we find a startup? And that's partially because I do work for various different stakeholders. I work with, high-tech startups by day. I do community work with some high-tech startups, and I run cohort programs that are that also help Main Street businesses. And, depending on who you're talking to is how they're actually going to define a startup at the end of the day. And so it becomes a little bit tricky. Is a startup just a new business? And that doesn't necessarily make sense. So I actually really like the definition that comes from Steve Blank, which is that a startup is an organization in search of a business model. And the reason I like that is that it speaks to the work that's being done and not an arbitrary measure of stage. Like we have, less than X number of employees. We've been in business less than Y number of months or years or whatever it is like that. Instead, it's just about, okay, we're searching for a business model. So what that means is like, as we talked about before, business model is 4 components. It's a customer for whom you're providing certain value. You're getting that value to them in a certain way, and you're capturing value in return, or who, what, how, and why. So who's the customer? What's the value proposition? How is value created? And then why does that make money, right? So who, what, how, and why. And so if you consider those 4 components of a business model, even if you're starting out a Main Street business, if you don't in advance have a really solid understanding of this, exactly who the customer is, and here's exactly how we're creating value for them, exactly how we're getting that value to them, and then this is exactly how it makes money. So like a franchise probably knows the answer to all 4 of those questions. But outside of that, like then, okay, yeah, you're a startup because you have to figure out the business model. You haven't figured that out yet. And that involves research, it involves design thinking, it involves traction thinking, it involves doing all those things to try to figure out what the business model is. And then once you figure out like, okay, this is our business model, then you can move into how do we scale? How do we get efficient? How do we build a company around this? And so that's why I like that definition, is because it speaks to the work that's being done, and it speaks to a non-time bound, non-employee headcount, non-revenue bound definition of like, this is when we're no longer a startup. We're no longer a startup when we've answered the core questions of a startup, which is what is our business model. So I just wanted to throw that out here because it's come up a lot in conversation lately. Yeah, I wanted to throw that out there. Speaking of which, I've been sharing a principle of traction thinking. There's 7 of them every week on the show. So we're at number 3 here. Traction principle number 3. So the first one was you have to maintain a model because you have to understand the theory of your startup. You have to understand the theory of what you're working on so that you can compare where am I today versus where I was yesterday versus where I want to be in the future. And in order that, you have to have a model. Like this is what the thing we think is. And then second to that is that when you have that thing written down, you have to be able to separate within that what's fact and what's conjecture. What do you know? What do you think you know? And what do you not know at all? That way you know where to focus. And so the third principle then is, what do you do with that focus? And this is a really important principle. This is about focusing on what is going to have a really big impact today, not tomorrow, not next year, but today. And a really common way that founders royally mess this up is they'll try to focus on engagement. They'll try to focus on retention or referral before they even have customers coming in the door. And it's not that those things aren't important. They're critical, but later, right? That they don't help you right now because you don't have customers coming in the door. And if you can't get customers coming in the door, then those things never matter. And if you have to get customers coming in the door differently, that work might be different in the future. So you have to focus on what's going to have a big impact right now. And the way that you do that, I've written about this before. I have a newsletter on it. I have videos on YouTube on it. But the way you do that is that you pick what is, if we think about all of our metrics or all of our model, like this is the thing, we identify what of those levers that we can pull, get customers into the ecosystem, delivering value to customers, getting them to pay, getting them to engage and retain, getting them to refer. They're all the different levers that we can pull. What's the one lever that would have an outsized impact if we were to pull it right now today? And that is the lever you want to pull. So you want to focus relentlessly on having immediate impact. Because when we talk about traction, we're talking about it's the metaphor of the tire, right? It clings to the road and it's what's pulling you down the track. Traction is what is keeping you moving down the track. And so we don't care about what the track looks like, a quarter mile from now. We're caring about the tire on the road right now. And you have to keep that tire going on the road. And the only way you do that is by focusing on what's happening right now, today, this very moment. So you have to focus on that absolutely relentlessly. Okay. I am also going to give a quick plug because coming up in a few weeks now, in just about 3 weeks and change, is the Startup Challenge happening here in Sacramento. So if you're going to be in Sacramento September 23rd to 25th, or if you just want an excuse to be in Sacramento September 23rd to 25th, then you got to come to the Startup Challenge. And there's 2 cohorts. There's a traction cohort and the catalyst cohort. We'll tell you about the catalyst cohort this week. So what this is where anybody who wants to, anybody who's interested in startups at all, can come together. We get together in a room on Friday night, and anybody who wants to gets 60 seconds to pitch a brand new idea. You don't have to pitch. I recommend it, but you don't have to. Anybody who wants to, 60 seconds, brand new idea. Boom. And then as the whole room, everybody participating in that, then talks about the ideas and votes on which ones they like. We narrow it down to the most popular ones. And then everybody in the room forms teams around those most popular ideas, those brand new popular ideas. And then they have from Friday night to Sunday night to turn that into a real startup that they then pitch to a panel of judges for amazing prizes like cash. So it's a rip-roaring good time. It's absolutely fantastic. We got food, we got coffee, we got snacks. We have we've got mentors and coaches, subject matter experts. We've got seasoned entrepreneurs. We've got some workshops to level up key skills, but it's all about doing huge amount of fun. Big plug for the Startup Challenge. And that is what is happening there. So September 23rd to 25th, I'll put the link in the show notes in the description. Okay, cool. So moving on. The other thing I want to is, so this was something, this is not really a question. I was talking about it with one of my cohorts on Monday, and I was actually talking coincidentally with an entrepreneur last week about the value of experience. And I actually wanted to share an example of what that is. So this is probably going to seem a little weird, but I'm going to get a personal for just a second and talk about an app called Superhuman. And if you're not familiar with Superhuman, it's an email app. And the first thing I'll say about Superhuman is that a lot of people make fun of it. And I was one of them that made fun of it too, because it's like $30 a month and it's just an email client. $30 a month for an email client. And it's like, it plugs into your Gmail or maybe your Outlook if that's your bag, which you're already either paying for or getting for free. And so it's like, okay, why am I like paying $30 for a tool? Like, what's wrong with Gmail? And they make this claim on the surface that it's fast, that it makes your email really fast. And so when I heard that, I thought, wow, my email's not slow. What does that even mean? And then I with things like key bindings, I'm like, well, Gmail has some key bindings and, all that stuff. And so I had for a long time really wanted to get to inbox zero, and it became something that I just could not do. In my personal email, I had more than 100,000 emails unarchived, just sitting in there, like the little red thing, 100,000 plus email sitting in there. And so at that point, you just like, F it, like I'm not getting to inbox zero. And anyway, so I started a new company last year called The Right Box. And so I had a new email address. And so I'm like, okay, this is my opportunity to keep on top of the unsubscribes and doing all that. And well, anyway, months passed. And I wasn't really getting to inbox zero. Like I was doing way better than I was on my last, my last email, because that's a pretty high bar to clear. So I was doing better, but I was like, okay, I'm still motivated. I want to see if I can figure this thing out. And so I wanted to try Superhuman, and eventually tried Superhuman. They have no free trial. Like you just got to pay the $30 and hop right in to it, which is like, again, it's like, oh. So I hopped in, and I'll say first, it feels fast. It does. It in fact feels fast. It's and it's not because they're doing anything particularly special. They don't do animations. They don't do transitions. So and because they're doing all of the syncing work in the background, you don't have to wait for that. So it does feel fast, but Gmail doesn't feel slow. It just that this feels particularly fast. They have key bindings that are I won't say intuitive, but they're not difficult to memorize. And so they've got all those little things, and you can get plugins for different stuff to help Gmail work a little bit more like this. And so none of that's a big deal, but they have those are all features. Like they have key bindings as a feature, and then they have a benefit for something like, okay, it feels fast, which is true. It does in fact feel very fast, which is an email is something that we think of as a time suck. So feeling fast is kind of cool, but that's not the point. The point that I want to talk about is the experience side. So value props, when it comes to the customer, are their needs, their wants, and their fears, right? So I need to do email. I want it to be fast. And when we come down to the fear side is where, like, there's inbox zero. That's a faint fear, that's at the back side. Products on the other side, on the other hand, they address needs, wants, and fears with features, benefits, and experience. And so, again, the feature is key bindings amongst a bunch of other things. And then the benefit is that it's fast and feels fast. But then we get to the experience. And this is where something gets really cool, and we can take a lot of lessons, and that we all have products like this in our life. I'm using Superhuman as an example, where not only does the email feel fast, and I get in there and I use it and it works, but I get to inbox zero. And I get to inbox zero for more than one reason. It's not just the stuff that like the key bindings or whatever else that it does. It does those well, and you can get probably 80% of that with Gmail if you're creative. But it gets all these key bindings to help all that get really fast. They also do a drip campaign every single day that's been going for me for months now, of just a new tip of something you can do in Superhuman to get that feeling of speed and getting to inbox zero. And this contains like a GIF animation inside the email body. So it's a super fast email to read, gives you the keyboard shortcuts. It's really heavily focused on that. And they give you all this stuff to kind of push you into that territory. They even had, like, I even had an onboarding call with one of their like customer success reps. I don't think they call them that, but with one of their customer success reps. So I got a half an hour where they just like addressed how I use email and told me how to be really efficient inside of that. And then like all of that stuff aligns together to create this experience for me that is not only easy and fast and delightful, but, and this is the kicker, is that a product like this, when they do experience really well, eventually impacts our identity. And so the inbox zero has become a thing. It's important to me. I want to get it right. And it bothers me when I don't. And I drive back into the product just to try to get to inbox zero, because they've programmed my brain and spoke to my internal fears and my internal anxieties and the internal wants that I had to push toward that very thing. So the lesson here, the question for startups, is when you're designing a product, any kind of product, even if it's a service, you want to understand what's the experience that you're designing for, and then how do you go about creating that where you can speak into their brand identity. And another example of this, just a really quick one, is Apple. Apple's very good at speaking to identity. All of their ads speak to identity, going all the way back to the Think Different ads and the Mac versus PC. The whole point was smugness that they sold. And it wasn't Apple being smug. It was you, the customer, who is smug. And they're going to speak to your smugness so that you can say, oh, I'm not stodgy, I'm creative, I'm fun, I think different, I'm like that. And then you lean into those Apple products because they're building in that identity. And then they deliver on it when you actually go to use some of their products. And I say this as a guy with an Android phone. But anyway, they speak really deeply into that identity. And they do that across all of their products, across a lot of years that they've been doing these kinds of campaigns. So anyway, focus on experience and how you can deliver that experience in the minds of your customers. That is where you get loyalty. That's where you get big payout. Okay, so I told June I'd come back, and I believe we have a follow-up from June here. So my goal: blow shoppers and growers' mind. Here's your channel to find healthy food. I'm not good at this stuff. What is this? So yeah. So okay. So you're still pointing toward, but what does that get you? So if you blow their minds, so what? Like what do you get from doing that? Right? Like, what are you trying to get toward? So you have this amazing thing, it blows their mind. They see all this organic produce, and so, right? What are they doing for you? What are you trying to get out of this? Like, what's the big goal? Is it sales? Is it $1? Is it dollars at the end of the day? Is it transactions? Is it building a community that you want to later monetize, right? What is the thing that you're trying to do? That's the goal. And then we can find signals toward that. So, okay. Now, one last thing here, which is I do have an exciting prototyping resource coming soon. I'm really excited about it. I hope to make an announcement on that in the coming weeks, but I'm going to drop a link to a little email box that you can fill out to be notified when that happens, because it's going to be pretty cool. It's big, it's free, and it's going to be really awesome. So lean into the power of prototyping. I've talked about it here before. I'm going to talk about prototyping a lot more. More startup founders to prototype. You can change your failure rate from 95% down to less than 20%. It's freaking amazing. And so I want to talk about it more. And so I got this free resource coming. So check that out too. I will drop that down below. And that's it. So I'm here every Thursday, which means I'm going to be back on September. That's wrong. I'll be back on September 8th at 10 a.m. next Thursday to talk about whatever questions come up between now and then. Make sure that you hit a like and subscribe, get notified for this. I also post daily shorts on YouTube. So if you want to learn more just about traction and go to market, I got all kinds of stuff. I got traction video dropping in just a few minutes, a bunch more, including customer personas and everything else dropping over the next week. 60-second video every single day to help you be a better entrepreneur. So click subscribe, follow those, and I will see you guys next week. Have a fantastic rest of the week. See you guys.